voted on at General Assembly? And at the end, what are your expectations of our GA delegates and what are our expectations of each other? So what is General Assembly? So it is an annual gathering of Unitarian Universalists from around the world. It tends to be US specific, but from around the world, where we worship together, we learn together, and we do the business of the denomination. So it's a combination, if you will, at the congregational level, it's a combination of the annual business meeting, a worship service, and adult RE and children's RE, if that makes sense to you, all in 5 days, right? In a city, a medium-sized city somewhere. Now, the Unitarian Universalist Association is made up of UU congregations, and each member congregation sends delegates. And it is the delegates who vote on the business of the denomination of the association. So just to be clear about what the relationship is between OUUC, this congregation, and the UUA, as I said, the UUA is a collection of UU congregations. The association is us. It's not something outside of us or other than us. And we are congregations in covenantal relationship. So Reverend Sarah is going to talk about the Article 2 bylaw changes later, and that's the covenant that we have as congregations together. And OUUC is a member congregation of the UUA, and has been since it was recognized. The Unitarian Fellowship of Olympia was recognized in 1952. So OUUC has been a member congregation for 71 years now. And because of that, OUUC is eligible to send delegates to General Assembly. Congregations get 1 delegate for every 50 members, and so there's 7 delegates who are congregants who attend from here. And then there are 3 of us who are delegates because of our position in the congregation or because of our ordination. And having said that, there's a registration for General Assembly. Our delegates will attend online or on-site. And there are things that everyone can participate in. So even if you don't want to be on Zoom or go to Pittsburgh for 5 days, you can participate in some parts of General Assembly. And it tends to be a worship service. So you can attend the business meetings if you want. You can't vote, but you can attend. There's the service of the living tradition, which is where ministers and other religious professionals are recognized, those who are making transitions. So when I was ordained, I participated in the service of the living tradition. You'll see Reverend Sarah as a part of that service as the chair of the credentialing committee for religious educators. There's a synergy bridging workshop. So you saw some youth bridge this morning in this congregation. This is a national bridging service for all of the youth who bridge. It's quite phenomenal always. And then the Sunday morning worship on the 25th. Anyone can stream on YouTube. So if you happen to be in Pittsburgh in that week in June, you can attend some of those things in person if you're vaccinated and wear a mask and follow the guidelines. So I put together, on the next slide, there is a website for General Assembly, and you can find all things GA on this website, including the links for how to participate in the things that are public.
At least the one I went to online back when COVID got started, there's also all the workshops, which are fabulous for anybody who doesn't know about. I mean, there's all the business part. I skipped all that. But the workshops were an incredible experience.
Yeah, the workshops are great. It's how we learn together. And you have to be registered in order to attend the workshops. They're not open to the public. So if that's something you really want to do, and if the registration fee is a barrier for you, because of your generosity at the Raise the Paddle at the auction, we now have a fund to help people pay for General Assembly attendance. So please talk to me or Reverend Sarah if that's a barrier.
Yeah, so why are we doing this forum? This is a bit of a new thing in the recent history of OUC to be a bit more organized about how we represent as delegates. So in the near past, we've typically not had all of our delegate spots filled. this year. It's really exciting that we have all of our delegates. Thank you so much for saying yes. And we haven't always done a very thorough job of recognizing that the delegates are representing the congregation and that we should all talk about things. So this year we thought, let's have a forum. We've been having these fabulous forums all year. It's been a great way to learn about all the Article 2 things that have been happening. And so let's continue this format. And that's why we're here today, to do this. So, that's you.
You ready? Okay. So as I mentioned, only certified congregations can send delegates to General Assembly, and only delegates can vote. They represent their congregation. Some congregations give delegates guidance about how to vote. And of course, we never know how the delegates vote because we all vote in secret. Sorry, we all vote privately. Thank you, Teresa. But some congregations do that, and that's kind of an open question of what guidance this congregation and perhaps the board would want to give our delegates. And delegates are expected to vote on behalf of the congregation. They represent the congregation at General Assembly and to add their voice to the business of our denomination. Delegates are also expected to abide by a covenant, whether they're online or on site. There is a behavioral covenant that is discussed, and that's one of the first things that they go over at General Assembly as we gather is what are the behavioral expectations of each other. And I know that's been a discussion here of what a behavioral covenant might be and what it looks like, and just know that that's one of the first things and important things that folks are invited into a covenantal relationship at General Assembly. And there are also folks who their job is to be present online and on site if there are any challenges to the covenant or if there are any conflicts that arise. There's a healthy congregations team or a right relations team at General Assembly to help with that, which is also what we are forming here.
So how were our delegates chosen? The process really began this year when we started talking about what was going to be coming up at General Assembly. We started having some forums about Article 2, and we started inviting everyone who was interested in these issues, if they were a member of the congregation and they wanted to be a delegate, to reach out to us. So the open invitation was extended several times, and folks who were interested in what's happening did say, yes, me. And then we also did make an intentional effort to include some demographics. Leo is representing our youth members, and that's really important to us to have that representation. So thank you for that, Leo. And so we're going to ask now that everyone introduce themselves with their names and their pronouns and how you'll be participating as a delegate, whether it's in person or online. And I think we'll just want to pass the mic down the line. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Beth Johnson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a business delegate, and I will be participating virtually.
I'm Tiffany Felch, and I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. And I'm going to be an online participant. This was my fourth online GA and my fourth time serving as an OUUC delegate.
Hello, I'm Leo Martinelli. I use he, him pronouns, and I will be participating online.
And while that gets passed back to the middle, I'll say I will be going to Pittsburgh, so I will be your in Pittsburgh delegate, and I'll be taking the banner with me.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if the online folks can see the banner in the back. It's probably not a good camera angle, but our OUUC banner, the new one that the Sewing Ministry did last year, is hanging. The vertical one. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it will be part of the banner parade, thanks to Reverend Sarah.
Emmy Allen, they, them pronouns, and just like the general online thing.
Riley Urick, she, her, and they, them pronouns. This will be my second time being an OUUC delegate. I'll be attending online for business only this year.
Carol McKinley, she, her pronouns, and I, as an affiliated community minister, I am automatically a delegate, and have been for a number of years, and I'll be attending online.
I'm Barb Carey, and I will be online, and this is my first GA.
I'm Martha Nikoloff. I'll be online, and I'm glad this is your first because it's my first too.
And I'm Reverend Mary, she, her pronouns, and I'll be attending virtually as well. They can't hear you online.
You can't hear me online.
Right.
Well, that's just as well. There's only two of you then that are going to be attending in person in Pittsburgh, or three?
Only one.
Only one? You?
That's right.
So 1 in person, 9 online?
Yes.
Shazam.
Yep. And the word is that next year it will be all online. Because I think one of the things we learned during COVID is that we get a broader participation when folks are online, and it's a whole lot less expensive, as you might imagine. Well, that's big. It is a big deal. Yeah, it is a big deal. So, we'll see. We learned a lot with COVID, and I think we're still figuring out what we learned. So, Reverend Carol, you have attended a lot of GAs, and so I wonder if there's anything you might want to add before we get into what the issues are.
Okay, first of all, I would say if you're attending either online or in person, bring your curiosity, because that's really fun. And curiosity about meeting other UUs from, and of course, if Sarah's the only one from here, she already knows lots of people. But anyway, that's really fun. And bring your curiosity about all of the workshops that are there. And the great thing about the workshops, now that we're online, which I celebrate the online 1,000%, because I've always felt that GAs represent a very elite number of people who can, number one, take the time and the expense of going to different places for that period of time. So this is a tremendous opportunity for all of us to participate, even if we can't travel. And by the way, I just want to shout out to Pittsburgh. It's a really interesting city that's reclaimed itself after many bad years. So anyway, it's a great city. But anyway, it's a wonderful learning experience for everyone. Try some of these workshops that you might not think, oh, I don't know if I want to go to that. But do it anyway. And for all of us online as registrants, those workshops will continue to be available. You don't have to go from 2 to 4 on Thursday afternoon, you know. You can call it up. So I am a huge fan of the online accessibility of GA.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. So there's a bunch that happens in the business meetings at General Assembly, and so we want to go over briefly what's going to be covered, and a couple things not so briefly because they're big deals. Because they're big deals. Oh, thanks, Teresa. You'll only have to remind me 4 more times. So if we could have the next slide then about what will be voted on. The very first thing that delegates vote on is how we're going to get things done, which is governance, how we get things done. And so there's rules that have been out for a while that we can all read if we want to, and we'll vote on adopting those rules. And then there are elections that happen over the course of GA. This year, the UUA will elect a new president. Susan Frederick Gray has been the president for 6 years and is stepping down. It's a 6-year term, and there is a new candidate up. All of the candidates put forward for election were selected by the nominating committee, except one, who is in the running by petition. And so all of the races are uncontested except for one. So the vote for president will happen. There's a board of review, some members of that, and the board of review is the board that hears appeals from religious professionals who have been sanctioned in some way by the UUA. So religious professionals behaving badly get sanctioned, and there's an appeal process, and the Board of Review hears those appeals. The Board of Trustees of the UUA, there are members for that. The Commission on Appraisal is required by the UUA bylaws, and they study any issues that they deem important to the association. So the last report that came out from the Commission on Appraisal was in 2021, and it was called Unlocking the Power of Covenant. And it was about how we come together in covenantal relationship. The Commission on Social Witness is charged to oversee our collective social justice and social witness as a denomination, and they are the group that reviews any actions of immediate witness, which come up at General Assembly. Reverend Sarah will talk about those. We elect a financial advisor, and then the contested election is for the nominating committee. The current nominating committee put members forth, and then there's one person who wanted to run and got signatures in order to be put on the ballot for consideration for the nominating committee as a contested election. So then one of the hot topics at General Assembly is a business resolution, and I'm going to take a minute to explain this because it's a big deal, and it has to do with the OUUC endowment, which there were a lot of questions about at the congregational meeting. And so I'm going to take just a minute, and I know that there's energy around this in the congregation, on the environmental team, environmental action team, and on the board. So the title of the business resolution is Complete Divestment from Fossil Fuel Industry and Subsequent Reparations. So this is a business resolution that delegates will vote on that advises the UU Common Endowment Fund, I'll talk about that in a minute, to completely divest from fossil fuels in any way, and to pay reparations from the endowment to indigenous and Black citizens in the US who have been damaged by climate change. So that's the resolution. It was put forth by youth, Unitarian Universalist youth, who sought petitions from congregations around the country in order to get this resolution, this business resolution, on the agenda for General Assembly. So they got 250 members of UUA certified congregations with no more than 10 signatures from each congregation, which is how they got the ballot. So this is a hot topic. It's been hotly debated for a while now, and I'm certain that it will be at General Assembly. So for background, the UU Common Endowment Fund is used by the UUA, the association, and UU congregations, including OUUC, to pool our resources, our endowment resources, so that we can get a good return on investment. Now, endowments are pots of money that are set aside in order to support congregations and the UUA into the future. And the idea of an endowment is that you never touch the principal, but you use the interest, right? So how much you make on interest is a big deal. And so as you might imagine, anything that fusses with what the investment is might impact the return on investment, which is the financial piece of this puzzle that we're seeking to unravel. So the UUCEF, UU Common Endowment Fund, is managed by a UUA investment committee and the UUA chief financial officer and the treasurer, and they receive advice from the UUA Board of Trustees. So that board is really important. For history, there was a business resolution passed at General Assembly in 2014 that was a move toward divestment from fossil fuels, but it allowed exceptions. And because of those exceptions, and with those exceptions, now the UUCEF does invest millions of dollars in fossil fuel companies like Chevron and Exxon and Occidental Petroleum, and it invests in banks that finance fossil fuel projects, and it invests in companies that explore for fossil fuels. And that's what this business resolution is seeking to do away with, is those exceptions. The petitioners were inspired by other denominations like the Presbyterian Church, the United Church of Christ, and the Quakers, and some Catholic dioceses that have fully divested from fossil fuels. So the resolution itself calls on the UUA to do several things. to immediately divest from all fossil fuel companies and to stop investing in fossil fuels. So it does away with all the exceptions that currently exist. It calls the UUA to commission a study by a third party to evaluate the impact of the divestment, to see what the actual impact is, and to give a report at next year's General Assembly, because we love our reports. There's lots of reports at General Assembly. For the reparations, this is what it says. The UUCEF will return an equivalent value of the securities that were invested in fossil fuels as of June 30th, 2022, or the total value of securities invested in fossil fuels at the time of the 2023 General Assembly of the UUA, whichever is greater, in the form of reparations to both the indigenous tribes and communities who are on the ancestral lands and continued stewards of this land, and the descendants of enslaved Black and brown people that were forced to create the physical wealth of this country. That's the reparations piece. Now, reparations are to be taken out of the UUA's funds, not congregational funds, not congregational endowment funds. And the UUA Board of Trustees is to establish a reparations task force that will monitor and distribute the reparations and hold public forums about that. So in sum, this is a big, long business resolution. It divests fully from fossil fuels. It says stop investing in fossil fuels. It studies the impact of the divestment and reports back. It pays reparations and establishes a task force to monitor that. So then the resolution ends with a call to congregations and individuals to notice their own investment in fossil fuels. Those of us who might have investments or IRAs or retirement through our workplaces or individually, chances are pretty good that there's investment in fossil fuels of some kind unless we're intentional about that. So this is a lot. It's a resolution that does a lot of things. As I say, it's hotly contested and there are strong opinions on many sides. I want to say that the OUUC Environmental Action Team was one of the congregations that collected 10 signatures in order to get this on the General Assembly agenda in the first place. So our EAT has been involved in this. Good for them for that, and listening to the youth who were saying we need to talk about this. And OUUC has an endowment fund that is invested in the UU Common Endowment Fund. And so some of our financial folks are a little bit worried about what the impact of divestiture will be. And so OUUC is a microcosm of the larger picture of the congregations and the UUA, right? We've got these competing needs, and really I think it's a fundamental question, a moral question of how we make a decision when we have competing needs, how we make an ethical and a moral decision. So before we talk about any other things, are there questions about this business resolution in particular?
The UUA resolution, if it passes, will not dictate how this church deals with its investments. Is that correct or is that wrong?
That's correct. OUUC could decide to not invest in the UU Common Endowment Fund. I will say that not long before I arrived, there was a decision by probably the board to use the UU Common Endowment Fund because it was easier. Before that, there was a whole team and the treasurer were asked to monitor OUUC's investments, and it was hard, and they didn't want to do it anymore. So there's an ease there, right? And yes, we could make a different decision, and it would require people to be able to do that, investing and monitoring for the congregation.
Hi, my name is Ryan Bay. Clarifying question, since I've never been to a GA, about the actions able to be taken with this resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Is it either solely an up or down vote, or is there the ability to amend it? Or I feel like that could spin off into about 15 different scenarios, but
Yep.
that question, and then trying to read through the text of the resolution, there was about 4 or 5 pages of all the numbers involved. Is there just a ballpark figure about, or that anyone's heard about what that dollar amount might be? In the hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions? I'm just trying to get a sense of the size of the dollar figure being discussed.
Yeah. Barb, do you have a, yeah.
I was on a Zoom call with the Young Adults for Divestment, and one of the people on the investment committee yesterday, and the figure is about $13 to $14 million out of $242 million.
Thank you, Barb. And I will say that it is possible that the business resolution will be amended. There's a formal process for that, and there will also be lots of debate. They have a pro mic and a con mic at GA, both online and on-site, and there's going to be long lines. And that's partly why we have rules that we agree on ahead of time about how we're going to have a discussion about a topic that folks are passionate about and should be. Thanks, Ryan, for the question. Are there other questions about this?
Because you will hear entertaining motions to amend, I think it's real important that our delegates, it's great that you can do this at home because you can sit with your own notepad and keep track of your own tally of here's a motion, here's what it does, here's what it doesn't do. And just like what happened this past week with the negotiations with the debt ceiling, be sure you go in recognizing that compromise is important. And right now, it sounds like there's a bunch of financial types at the association who are very defensive about any kind of change whatsoever. And then there is this very active group that solicited the signatures for the petition, and they have a resolution. They want that to be. I sincerely doubt that either one should expect to get exactly what they want. And so be ready to, hear for compromise and work towards that, because that's how you elicit the beginning of change. It's not going to be dramatic to start with. It has to be a step, and then we'll get another step next year.
So I just want to give a shout out to Barb Carey and to Diana Finch. They have both collected information and shared it with the Board of Trustees and the delegates and me. There's a ton of information out there that's trying to pull together accurate information, which is hard sometimes. And so thanks to you both for the work that you've done. Barb?
As far as compromise goes, I just wanted to mention this Zoom call yesterday with people from around the country who are interested in this, and one representative from the UU Young Adults for Divestment. There's another, they're doing the thing again today at 3 p.m. if anybody's interested in hearing from them. They've been blocked from putting out information to the UUA pretty much. But anyway, the representative said, we realize that this is a lot to ask. And, they recognize that if they were to get reparations, they would be happy with that, even though they would like to get the whole thing, so they are willing to compromise. I just wanted to mention that.
So can this resolution, it can be amended, but can it be broken into 2 or 3 different resolutions? Is there a process for doing that? Because this just sounds to me like you don't want to, in compromising, do you end up throwing out 2/3 to get 1/3, or can you say, let's break it down and do it? Is there a business part for that process? And also, how do you all talk to each other? In some ways, being online is cool, but you're all at home, so you're sort of in silos. So when you're at GA, when we went to Pacific Northwest in Anchorage, you're in the same conference center with everybody else, so you can run around and pick somebody else's, what are you doing? What did they say? So I guess that's.
It's two questions. So first question, Judith. I don't think it's possible to have another business resolution. What I don't know is if it's possible to have amendments that would, make this a two-part or something like that, and it could be voted on in parts. I don't know the rules well enough. And I am certain that the moderators for General Assembly are going to educate us well about what's possible here, because for sure there's questions about that. And the other thing I'll say is that there are advisors to the UU youth, and it might have been suggested that they break things apart, and they didn't. And so, I just want to acknowledge that I'm certain that the youth and the young adults were smart enough to know that this is two things, and they kept them together. It was their choice, and this is their ask. So in terms of how we're going to communicate with each other, just like we have a chat on our Zoom when we do our services, there's a chat, and there are different rooms to go into for delegates at General Assembly. And so we will be chatting with delegates from all over the country who are online if we want to, those of us online. And Reverend Sarah, last year, I didn't attend GA last year, but Reverend Sarah set up a text for all of the delegates so that we can keep in touch with each other. I am also going to offer to delegates to have us watch the business sessions and anything else that folks might want here at the church if we want to come together to do that. So we'll connect.
Solution, if we were interested, could we come and watch, or is it just delegates?
Sure, you could come and watch if we're here on site. So,
Yeah, if you're on site.
Yeah, let me think about how we're going to publicize that then for folks who might want to come. It's going to be lively. Any other questions about this, Jack? And then Riley.
Just a quick one. Since we're divesting ourselves from fossil fuels, $13 or $14 million, where's that going to go? Is it going to go into green energy? Has that decision even been thought about or made yet?
Yeah, as I read the resolution, Jack, the money that's currently invested in fossil fuels would be reinvested in other things based on the guidance of this investment committee, which has, other constraints on it. I'm pretty sure we don't invest in firearms and probably not tobacco and, alcohol and those kinds of things. Yeah, I mean, we divested from lots of things over the years. Remember the divestment from South Africa, all those things to bring about change. So this is not a new strategy. So Riley?
I'll just add that I was at the Nisqually Land Trust, which is a local nonprofit, and they went through a similar divestment process, and it took many years and trials. And it sounds like to me, the baseline of this resolution is really like, let's start trying. And I think that for me as a delegate, that's what I'm voting for, is like whatever the yes, let's start trying is. And yeah, financial things, people want to see proof in numbers, but in order to get that proof, you have to try. And so that's whether that's taking a third or half or something and looking at comparison accounts, however people move towards that. I've seen it work for other groups. It worked for the Land Trust. And it's just, that we all have fears about security and what the future is that are tied to money. And so I think that whatever we can do to move together while also moving is what my vote will go towards.
Yeah, I wanted to add something also about the discussion of how this congregation uses invests our endowment in their endowment, basically, or however you want to phrase it. And that's sort of a matter of ease because we don't have to worry about all those little financial decisions. But to me, it's also a matter of trust, that we're trusting the UUA to make good values-based investment decisions. And so honestly, I was a little bit surprised to hear that we hadn't already divested from fossil fuels. When I inherited some money from my mom, it was already invested, very ethically in socially responsible investing, no fossil fuels, none of all those things. And I've kept it that way, and my investment's doing fine. So I'm just like, yeah, of course.
Just a quick comment about how the UUA invests. From the discussions that I've been in on, it sounds like they're a volunteer committee. So some of them are professionals and some of them are not. So they don't have a lot of time to micromanage, so they have a fund manager. And from what they've said, it sounds like their fund manager is not a specialist in values-based investing. And I mean, I'm not a financial person, but I've been researching this, and there are other fund managers that are values-based, and they do well. They do better than some that are not values-based. So I think that's kind of new to them, which was kind of shocking to me, and kind of like, okay, you guys, yeah. I mean, we're part of a religious community, not a financial institution, so we got to get our game up or something.
I guess it, Barb, when you said that this morning, that blew my mind. That we don't have values already tied into the investment process for this source of money, or how the money is taken care of. But one of my questions is, did you start out by saying, Reverend Mary, that at 2010, 2012, that X% was already taken out of fossil fuel? I mean, they've moved in that direction.
Right.
So, and we're talking 17 million out of 200 million.
220 something.
Is what's left in fossil fuels.
Right.
Does somebody know what the rules for how they made these exceptions were, and why it sounds like they are moving away from fossil fuels, but they've somehow got these loopholes. So
right.
Is somebody asking about the loopholes?
That's what this resolution is about, is the loopholes. So it was a 2014 General Assembly passed a business resolution that moved toward divestment from fossil fuels. The loopholes that were left, I wrote this down because I knew somebody was going to ask. The loopholes were the UUA could retain investments in fossil fuel companies that were the UUCEF, where the UUCEF is engaged in shareholder activism. So we kept investment in companies where we could show up and we had enough of a say that we could sway how the vote would go for that company. And that it would call for divestment. It calls for divestment from just the largest gas and oil companies. There's a list. And it did not call for divestment from the fossil fuel industry supporters like the banks and the financiers. So Halliburton, for example, does gas and oil exploration all over the country. There's investment in Halliburton. There's investment in Chase Bank, and all the big banks so those are the things that were allowed. Made sense at the time, probably, and here we are taking another step toward, okay, let's close the loopholes, which is how I read the resolution. I think we probably need to move on.
Yeah.
Are there any online comments or questions before we move on? Okay, thank you.
So moving on to another large item of business at this year's General Assembly, Article 2, it will also be coming for a vote this year, the first of 2 votes at General Assembly. So Article 2 is part of the UUA bylaws. It's the covenant, like Reverend Mary said, between the congregations. And Article 2 is where the 7 principles language was living. And the bylaws require that we revisit Article 2 on a regular basis. So the process that has already happened, a study commission was created. We've had multiple opportunities for input, and the study commission came out with a proposed draft for a new Article 2. There can be amendments proposed at this year's General Assembly, and there have been some already online mini assemblies to collect some amendments. There will be another mini assembly during General Assembly for those who are really interested in getting down into the weeds of further amendments proposed. And then this year, we will be voting on whether to enter into a year of study of the new Article 2 with the amendments. And so it's a simple majority is needed this year at General Assembly to pass Article 2 forward. If it does pass, then the study commission goes back into work to make sure the amendments and everything are cohesive, and to put that back together, whatever we do to it this year. And then it comes back to General Assembly in 2024. And at that General Assembly, it does require a 2/3 vote to pass and become the new bylaws of the UUA. So that's what we will be doing this year as we look at voting on Article 2. And there's been a lot about Article 2 that we've already done. So if you're interested in going back and looking at our previous forums or anything like that, there's tons of information about what's going on with Article 2. But before we open up for more questions and so forth, I'll just briefly mention the last little thing. So the other thing that happens at General Assembly are actions of immediate witness. And I kind of think that this is where we just take it's like a temperature testing of what are the issues that are currently really important to Unitarian Universalists across the association. So there will be proposed actions of immediate witness brought forth, and there will be more than can be carried forward. So always it's a process of delegates voting, basically, do what we think that we need to study and act about reproductive justice this year, or climate change this year, or this one or that. I mean, usually there's 5 brought forward and 3 will be voted to be this year's actions of immediate witness. So we don't know what those are quite yet, but that will be another thing that the delegates will be voting on. And actions of immediate witness are a call for us as Unitarian Universalists across the association to act. They're not binding, but they are a call on us. So it's a hearing what the larger association feels is the place for our energy to go this year.
So Reverend Carroll, I want to ask again if there's anything you want to add to that or any wisdom you have to share.
The actions of immediate witness are always very interesting debates, you might say, in front of the General Assembly. And as Sarah mentioned, several are proposed. In the past, we've had issues, not just climate change or reproductive justice, but healthcare reform, elder care, and proposals around that. And all of these discussions have, passionate advocates on each side, or supporting those actions of immediate witness. And I find they're very informative, and they show where the passions within our congregations lie. And even though not everyone is chosen, everyone demands the attention, I think, in our society as well as in our congregations.
Thank you, Carol. So I think the actions of immediate witness are due to be submitted to the Commission on Social Witness in the next couple days, and then they'll review them and put them out. So they'll probably,
I think they were due on June 1st.
oh, I thought it was the 5th. Okay, somewhere in here, they're getting collected and will be reviewed and will go up on the website so you can see what they are and what we'll be looking at. So anything online related to this? Okay. So just a couple comments about Article 2. Reverend Sarah has put together a whole collection of information about Article 2, websites and links and documents and the 2 forums that we did on the Article 2 changes. So that's available. If you can't find that, let us know and we'll get you connected to that. And then in looking at our congregational year next year, we'll be using the values identified by the Article 2 Commission as our monthly spiritual themes for next year. So we'll have lots of opportunity in worship and religious education and in small groups to explore those values that were identified as our core. So now we just want to have an opportunity for what's your, delegates, do you have any questions of the congregation? And congregation, do you have anything that you want to say to the delegates?
I want to put in a plug for the divestment program. I think the idea of compromise is excellent, and I think you'll probably have an opportunity to advance toward the goal of divestment. It's probably not going to happen right away. And probably more important than that is what we saw today in our service is the inclusion of the youth. And these kids, I watched one or two of their presentations earlier on, they're working really, really hard on this. And they need to be encouraged by the UUA for what they've done.
I'm not a public speaker, but I feel like I got a lot to share about this, especially about the youth. From what I've heard, there's a group of 5 youth that have put together this petition. They started out trying to work with the investment committee, and the investment committee told them, we can't do this the way you're trying to do it. So their impression was we do a business petition. And when they did the business petition, they locked them out of anymore. They wouldn't let them come to their committee meetings anymore. They would not talk to them anymore. It's like, what the heck? You know, we've got this Article 2 about love and inclusion and encouraging youth, but for some reason, you know, and I can understand, I've been in state government where, you know, you figure you know everything and those other people don't know anything. But anyway, I just think the young people here have met weekly for a year. They live around the country. There's only 5 of them. And they've covenanted to keep doing this because it's so important to them. And so there you go.
Delegates, any questions of the congregation or comments?
Even though it's not contested, I'll just say that I'm really excited about the election of Sophia Bettencourt as president for the UUA, and whether she's a familiar face to some of y'all or not. She was one of the triplicate presidents that stepped in when there was a moment of need, but she's someone that I got to learn from at Star King School for the Ministry. And I think she's a wonderful speaker and very grounded. And I think that because there are other contested issues, her election will get kind of swept under the rug, but just things to look forward to.
And I'll just add my my acknowledgement of Reverend Sophia as well. She was one of my instructors at Star King and is theologically wise and grounded and will take us in interesting directions. She also has a beautiful pastoral presence, and oh my goodness, do we need a pastor right now? So.
Oh, I just want to give my thumbs up to the divestment. I would support the whole package. I know there's pain involved in change, and I acknowledge that I speak from a place of privilege. Anyhow, I thumbs up on that.
I just wanted to say that there is a kind of a comeback. I went to a Zoom meeting in about a month ago, I guess, and the investment committee has come up with an alternative to what the resolution is offering. And so I just am saying that that's available. If the delegates, I would invite you to get a hold of me and I can give you a copy of the PowerPoint that they used at that meeting.
I'll make this quick. First of all, has the endowment committee read our covenants? By eliminating the youth from a meeting, that doesn't seem right. And secondly, thank you to all of you for doing this. Appreciate it.
Anything else today? Mhm.
Has our has our endowment committee taken a stand on or talked to you all about this?
So the board has information, and the board will be discussing this at the board meeting this coming Thursday. And the question before the board will be, does the OUUC board want to give direction to the OUUC delegates? And the answer may be no. Mhm. It's complicated. Yeah, it's complicated. Diana, do you want to add anything to that? Diana is, yeah. Yeah, there will be lots of information is what Diana's saying. Diana is on the board now going off and the liaison to the Legacy Giving Committee here. So you know, there may be something that comes back to the board here about the future investment of the endowment funds for OUUC, depending on what the outcome is of this business resolution. As Frank pointed out, we have our own decisions to make about our own money. Oh, pardon me, Emmy. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I've been moving around. My body hurts. I don't mean to be weird, although I am weird. I thought that Reverend Sophia, there was like a ride-in. The dude from Spokane, isn't he up? Yes. Is he up to anything this time? I'm ready to vote him down. Okay.
So what Emmy is alluding to is Reverend Todd Eckloff in one of the Spokane congregations has started a very small group of folks who are disenchanted with the UUA. And the only contested election for the nominating committee this year is a person who is connected with Reverend Eckloff in Spokane, who is unhappy with the UUA board and who wants to have a say about who gets nominated for that UUA board. You may hear about the Gadfly movement. If you want to talk about that, just let me know. I'm happy to take a walk and talk about what's happening there.
Yeah, and I just attended, I don't know if any of the other delegates did either, but there was a forum by the candidates for the one contested election, which is for the nominating committee. So that is the only contested election. There are 4 candidates who have been nominated for the committee and 1 who is by petition, and we will be voting on filling the 4 seats. So that is the only contested election that the delegates will be voting on this year.
How many members on the committee and how long are the terms of the nominating committee?
That's a good question, and I don't remember off the top of my head. Carol, do you remember?
I don't remember either. We can sure. Yeah, there's a section of the committee that turns over every year, that kind of a thing. So, yep.
I'll just add my personal comment on the person contesting the role on the nominating committee, Dick Burkhart, and I do know him very well personally, and he is actually very often a disgruntled person on a lot of things. So,
right.
Anyway, I don't think he has a lot of support, but he is from the Northwest.
Mm-hmm. He's a member of the Saltwater congregation up in Federal Way. Yeah, close by. And Sarah,
I've got somewhat of a different question. Does anybody know the number, if any, of the United States Congress? Is any member of the U.S. Congress a UU member?
3?
Thank you.
Carbon
Thank you.
says 3.
I'm sorry.
So Carbon says there was a Pew survey a few years ago, and there were 3 members of Congress who are UUs.
We'll talk later.
Thank you for knowing that, Carbon.
I am going to duck out real quick, so farewell, you all. I need to go join the youth group.
Yep. So anything else that needs to be said today before we go out into this beautiful sunny day? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So let's well, the chalice is extinguished because we went over an hour. So I'll just have some words as we leave from Hope Johnson. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. Enjoy the day. Thank you. So delegates,